Sam never expected his life to change while walking his dog along the old logging road behind his house. The town of Millbrook was so quiet that most people forgot it existed on the map. He worked at the grain depot, woke at 5 each morning, and spent his evenings fixing the porch steps or listening to the wind shake the pine trees. His wife, Elena, taught piano to a handful of local children, and their biggest worry was whether the roof would leak again before winter. That particular Tuesday started like any other. The sun hung low and orange over the hills, and Sam's dog, a tired mutt named Gus, sniffed at a mound of dirt near the fallen oak. Sam almost walked past it, but the dirt looked too fresh, darker than the rest, and a corner of black leather peeked out from under a rock. He knelt down and brushed away the loose soil, revealing an old suitcase, the kind people used before plastic became common. It was heavy, and when he unlatched it, his breath caught in his throat. Stacks of $100 bills filled the entire case, bundled with rubber bands that had turned brittle with age. There had to be hundreds of thousands, maybe more. Underneath the money lay a pistol, a simple revolver with a scratched grip, and a folded piece of paper with a single word written in pencil: later. Sam felt his stomach drop. He looked around, but the road was empty, and the only sound came from Gus scratching at a root. He should have called the sheriff, but Millbrook didn't even have a sheriff on duty after 6. The nearest police station was 40 minutes away in Creston. Instead, he closed the suitcase, carried it to his truck, and hid it under a tarp in the shed. He told himself he would figure out what to do in the morning. That night, he and Elena ate dinner in silence. She seemed tired, and he did not mention the suitcase. At 10 o'clock, she went to take a bath, and Sam fell asleep on the couch watching an old movie. He woke up to the sound of the front door clicking shut. The clock on the wall said 2:15 a.m. Elena was not in the bathroom, and her slippers lay by the bed, still warm. He ran outside, and the porch light illuminated a single sheet of paper taped to the doorframe. The handwriting was sharp and hurried, and the message was clear: return what was not his within 24 hours, or she would die. No police, no phone, no friends. He knew where to start. Sam's heart pounded so hard that his vision blurred. He checked the shed, and the suitcase was still there, untouched, but someone had moved a chair near the window. They had watched him hide it. They had taken Elena while he slept, and they knew exactly where he lived. Panic told him to call for help, but there was no cell service in Millbrook. The tower had been down for 3 years, and the landline in the kitchen was dead because he had forgotten to pay the bill. He was alone, with no car except his old truck, no weapon except the revolver in the suitcase, and no one to trust. The note said 24 hours, but he did not even know who they were. He sat on the floor of the shed, holding the pistol, and forced himself to think. The suitcase had been buried for a long time. The rubber bands crumbled when he touched them, and the money smelled of mildew. Whoever buried it must have been waiting for someone to find it, or maybe they had come back and discovered it missing. But Sam had only taken it that afternoon. How could they have known so quickly? Unless they had been watching the road for days, waiting for someone to stumble upon their cash. He remembered the folded paper inside the case, the word later. That was not a label, it was a message. The people who buried the money intended to come back for it, and Sam had accidentally stolen from them. Now they had Elena, and they wanted their property returned. But where? The note said he knew where to start, but Sam did not know anything. He had lived in Millbrook his whole life, and the only hidden places he knew were the old mine shafts and the abandoned church. He grabbed the only useful thing he owned, a faded map of the county that his father had drawn decades ago, marking logging trails and creek crossings. With the suitcase in the truck bed and the revolver tucked into his belt, he drove toward the one place that felt wrong enough to be the answer, the old quarry at Black Ridge, where kids dared each other to spend the night because people said they heard whispers from the rocks. The road ended a mile before the quarry, so Sam walked the rest of the way in the dark. The moon hid behind clouds, and every branch that snapped under his boots made him flinch. He reached the edge of the quarry just as the first hint of gray appeared in the sky. Someone had built a small fire near the water's edge, and a single figure sat on a crate, waiting. The figure stood up and said nothing. It simply pointed to the ground, where a second suitcase, identical to the first, lay open and empty. Sam understood. They wanted him to transfer the money from his suitcase into theirs. But as he knelt down to open the latches, he noticed something else. The empty suitcase had a name written inside the lid, faded but legible, Victor Marchetti. Sam had never heard that name in his life. Yet the figure smiled and told him in a low voice that he did not remember Victor, but Victor remembered him. 23 hours left. Start walking. Then the figure vanished into the trees, leaving Sam alone with 2 suitcases and a question that would change everything. Sam sat by the cold fire for nearly an hour, staring at the name inside the empty suitcase. Victor Marchetti meant nothing to him, but the way the stranger had spoken that name, with a mix of satisfaction and old anger, told Sam that this was personal. He opened his own suitcase and began counting the money, not to keep it but to understand. Between the stacks of bills, he found more folded papers, each one with a date written in the same pencil scrawl. The oldest date was from 15 years ago, and the newest was just 3 weeks before Sam found the case. Someone had been adding money over time, hiding it in the same spot, and the word later was a promise to return. Sam thought about his father, who had died 10 years ago after a long sickness. His father had worked as a night watchman at a warehouse near Creston, a job that paid almost nothing. But before he died, he had told Sam something strange: if he ever found something that did not belong to him, he should leave it alone, because some debts were paid with blood. Sam had assumed his father was rambling from the pain medication. Now he wondered if his father had known about the suitcase. He decided to search his father's old belongings, which were stored in a locker at the edge of Millbrook. The drive took 20 minutes, and the sun was fully up by the time he arrived. The locker was a rusted metal box filled with yellowed newspapers, broken tools, and a single photograph. In the photograph, a young man stood next to a car with a dented fender. The man's face was partially torn away, but the name written on the back said Victor Marchetti with the year 1998. Underneath, in his father's handwriting, Sam read that his father had seen what they did, and that keeping quiet was the only way for both of them to survive. Sam's hands trembled. His father had witnessed something involving this Victor Marchetti, something so dangerous that he had hidden the photograph and never spoken of it again. Sam searched the locker more carefully and found a small notebook with addresses and names. One name appeared repeatedly: Carlos Vane. Next to it, a note said that Carlos had taken over after Victor disappeared and that he lived in the old church on Ridge Road. Sam knew that church. It had been abandoned since before he was born, and locals said it was cursed because the pastor had hanged himself in the bell tower. But Sam no longer believed in curses. He believed in men who had suitcases full of money and kidnapped wives. He drove to Ridge Road, parked half a mile away, and approached the church on foot. The building leaned to one side, and most of the windows were boarded up, but smoke rose from a chimney at the back. Someone was living there. Sam circled around and found a broken window near the kitchen. Through the gap, he saw a man in his 50s with gray hair and a scar across his left cheek. The man was cooking eggs on a portable stove, and on the table beside him lay a photograph of Elena. Sam's blood turned to ice. He pulled the revolver from his belt, but he had never fired a gun at another person, and his hand shook so badly that he could barely aim. Instead, he backed away and tried to think. The note said he had 24 hours, but that was a trick. They did not want the money as much as they wanted him to suffer. He remembered the stranger at the quarry saying that Victor remembered him. Sam had never met Victor, but his father had. Maybe Victor had been wronged by Sam's father, and now Sam was paying the debt. He decided to confront Carlos Vane directly, not with violence but with a trade. He walked to the front door and knocked. The man inside went silent, then the door creaked open. Carlos Vane looked at Sam with cold recognition and remarked that Sam was early. He had expected Sam to run. Sam held up the suitcase and offered all the money in exchange for his wife's location. Carlos laughed, a dry sound like cracking wood, and explained that the money meant nothing. Victor did not care about the money, he cared about what Sam's father had taken from him. Sam shook his head, insisting that his father was only a night watchman who never stole anything. Carlos stepped closer, and Sam saw a knife handle protruding from his belt. Carlos then revealed the truth. Sam's father had watched Victor kill a man in that warehouse 15 years ago. Instead of calling the police, Sam's father had helped Victor hide the body. Then he had blackmailed Victor for 10 years, taking money from that suitcase every month until Victor went to prison for a different crime. Victor had gotten out last year. He wanted revenge, not on Sam's father because he was dead, but on Sam. Sam felt the ground shift under him. His father, the quiet man who fixed porch steps and never raised his voice, had been an accomplice to murder and a blackmailer. The money in the suitcase was not drug money or robbery proceeds, it was hush money, paid by Victor to keep Sam's father silent. And when Sam found the suitcase, Victor assumed that Sam was continuing the blackmail. Sam tried to explain that he had found it by accident and never wanted any of this. Carlos studied him for a long moment and then told him where Elena was being held. Victor was at the old mine shaft on Cooper Hill. He would kill Elena at midnight unless Sam came alone and brought the revolver that was in the suitcase. That revolver belonged to the man Sam's father helped bury. Victor wanted to use it to finish what started 15 years ago. Sam looked at the gun in his hand. It was heavy and cold, a relic of a crime he had nothing to do with. He could run to the police, but Creston was 40 minutes away, and by the time they believed him, Elena would be dead. He could try to ambush Victor, but he had no training and no backup. Or he could do something that neither Victor nor his father had ever considered. He could refuse to play their game. He took a deep breath and asked Carlos whether Victor knew that Sam's father was dead and that Sam was not the one who took the money all those years. Carlos shrugged and said that Victor knew but did not care. Sam was his father's son, and that was enough. Sam nodded slowly. He opened the suitcase, took out a single stack of bills, and handed it to Carlos, telling him to take it and leave. Carlos was to tell Victor that Sam was coming, but that Sam was bringing something better than a gun, the truth. Carlos looked confused but took the money. Sam turned and walked back to his truck, leaving the suitcase behind. He drove toward Cooper Hill with the revolver in the glove compartment and a plan forming in his mind. The truth would not stop a bullet, but it might buy him enough time to save Elena. Cooper Hill rose above the town like a scar on the land, its slopes dotted with abandoned mine entrances that gaped like dark mouths. Sam parked at the base and climbed the rocky path, the revolver heavy in his jacket pocket. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of red that reminded him of blood. He reached the main shaft just as the first stars appeared. A lantern hung from a wooden beam, casting flickering light on two figures. Elena sat on a crate with her hands tied behind her back, a strip of cloth over her mouth. Behind her stood a tall man with hollow cheeks and eyes that held no warmth. Victor Marchetti. He looked older than his photograph, worn down by prison and rage, but his hands were steady as he pointed a pistol at Sam's chest. Victor remarked that Sam had come, and that he had expected Sam to send someone else, like his father always did. Sam raised his empty hands to show he was alone, with no police and no tricks, and asked Victor to let Elena go so they could talk. Victor laughed without humor and accused Sam's father of talking for 15 years, making new demands every month for more money or else he would go to the police. Victor had paid because he had no choice. Now he was free, and Sam's father was dead, so Victor would take what he was owed from Sam. He pressed the pistol against Elena's temple, and she whimpered through the cloth. Sam felt a surge of anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. He admitted that his father had done terrible things, blackmail and helping hide a body. But Sam was not his father. He had never taken a cent from Victor. He had found that suitcase by chance and tried to return it. The man at the quarry had told Sam to bring the money, but that was never what Victor really wanted, was it? Victor's jaw tightened, and he confessed that he wanted Sam to suffer the way Victor had suffered. He wanted Sam to watch his wife die, and then he wanted Sam to live with that for the rest of his life. That was revenge. Sam took a slow step forward and argued that revenge would not bring back the man Victor had killed. It would not erase the years Victor spent in prison. It would only make Victor a murderer again, and this time there would be no one to help him hide the body. Victor's hand wavered for a fraction of a second. Sam saw the opening and pressed on. He repeated what Carlos had told him. The man Victor killed was a thief who tried to rob his warehouse. It was not premeditated, it was a fight that went wrong. Sam's father had helped Victor because he was afraid, not because he wanted to control Victor. But then Sam's father realized he could use the situation against Victor, and he became the monster. Sam apologized for what his father did, but killing Elena would not fix that. Victor's eyes flickered with something that might have been doubt. He asked if Sam expected him to believe that Sam was different, that Sam would not go to the police the moment Elena was freed. Sam shook his head and said he would go to the police regardless. But he would tell them the truth, that Victor acted in self-defense 15 years ago, and that Sam's father extorted him. That was a very different story than murder and kidnapping. Victor might still go to prison, but not for life. And Elena would be alive. Sam pulled the revolver from his pocket, slowly, and placed it on the ground between them. He explained that this was the gun from the suitcase, the one used in the original crime. Victor could take it if he wanted. But if he hurt Elena, he would lose any chance at a fair hearing. He would become exactly what the police already thought he was, a cold-blooded killer. Victor stared at the revolver for a long time. The wind picked up, rattling the lantern. Elena's eyes were wide and wet, but she was no longer struggling. Finally, Victor lowered his pistol. He walked over to the revolver, picked it up, and examined it. Then he did something unexpected. He ejected the bullets, one by one, letting them fall into the dirt. He said quietly that he had not come to kill an innocent woman. He had come to confront the man who ruined his life. But Sam was not that man. Sam was just a carpenter who found a suitcase. Victor tossed the empty revolver aside and cut Elena's bonds with a knife. She stumbled to Sam, and he caught her, holding her tight. Victor turned his back and walked toward the mine entrance. He told Sam to take his wife and leave. Victor would be gone by morning, and Sam would never see him again. But Sam should remember that his father's sins followed him. Sam should not let them poison the rest of his life. Then Victor disappeared into the darkness of the shaft. Sam helped Elena down the hill, half carrying her over the loose rocks. She was shaking but alive. They reached the truck, and he drove without speaking until Millbrook's lights appeared in the valley. Only then did Elena whisper a question about what had happened and who that man was. Sam pulled over and turned to face her. He explained that the man was a ghost from his father's past, a ghost that almost destroyed them. He told her everything, from the suitcase to the blackmail to the murder. When he finished, she was silent for a long time. Then she asked what they should do now, whether they should call the police. Sam looked out the window at the quiet town. Victor would be gone, but the evidence remained: the suitcase, the photograph, the notebook. He could report everything and let the law decide. Or he could bury it all again and pretend none of this had happened. He thought about his father, about the weight of secrets, and about Elena's face in the lantern light. He decided yes, they would call the police. Not for revenge, but for the truth. He drove to Creston that night and told the police everything. They found the suitcase, the revolver, and the notebook. They searched Cooper Hill but found no trace of Victor Marchetti. The mine shaft led to a network of tunnels that stretched for miles. Victor had vanished, perhaps forever. But Sam had something better than closure. He had his wife, his home, and a clean conscience. He sold the old house in Millbrook, and he and Elena moved to a small town on the coast, where no one knew about suitcases or blackmail or ghosts. Sam still walks his dog every evening, but he never digs in the dirt anymore. Some things are better left buried. And every time he sees a child playing with a suitcase, he thinks of the 24 hours that almost cost him everything. But he does not flinch, he smiles, takes Elena's hand, and keeps walking. The past is a closed door. The future is an open road. And that, perhaps, is the only justice that matters.